Okay, if we are live, and I believe we are. So, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the year of 2023. It's our newest podcast here titled All Pro Sports Podcast. This is a continuation of our 100 years of the NFL, a historical journey started last year. Officially, year two of broadcast has officially begun here on this channel, and certainly it's going to be a pretty fun night here tonight with, of course, Billy McGee and myself discussing the latest in the NFL and, of course, around the college football. But, Billy, first and foremost, though, what an exciting semifinal matchup between Georgia and Ohio State, and certainly Michigan and TCU last weekend. I can't wait to hear your thoughts about what you thought of those two games over last week.
I'll start with the Michigan and TCU one because I was very adamant on the last one that TCU would not win that, and I was very wrong. I owe TCU an apology, mostly that defense. I didn't think the defense could show up like they did with the 2 touchdowns that they scored. I think, what is it, like almost back? Was it back-to-back? Or it was pretty close to back-to-back pick sixes, I think.
Yeah.
It was really close together, and they made it hard on J.J. McCarthy. They played better against the run than Ohio State did against Michigan. Because I think, what was it, late in the game, Donovan Edwards against Ohio State was just like he got like several big runs against them. Right. But I think he had the first run in the beginning of the game. And other than that, I don't really think they had like major explosive runs other than that first run.
For the rest of the game, yeah.
Yeah, and then Max Duggan had – not really an efficient game from him, but when you score, what was it? Was it 1 or 2 passing touchdowns? Because I know he ran 2 in. So he had 4 total touchdowns in, which is, because he ran 2 in, and I believe I'll have to double check that, but I think it was 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns through the air, and then he ran 2 in. But what a game! What was it? What was the final score? Was it 51-45?
Yeah. 45.
And then moving on to the next one, obviously, which I went in that game. I told my friends, I was like, I don't think that can be beat for an entertaining game by this Georgia game. And I think I was wrong. I think that Georgia-Ohio State game was more entertaining than TCU-Michigan, because I think it was 2 separate times that Ohio State had a 14-point lead and let Georgia either tie it up or come back and take the lead on them. And it was just crazy because Stetson Bennett, for like a 30-minute span, like almost the entirety of the second and third quarter, just looked terrible. Like, wasn't doing good at all. But then when it came to the fourth quarter, Stetson Bennett does what Stetson Bennett does in big games, and he turned it on at the best time possible. That busted coverage, I think the corner slipped. He had that 70 however many yard touchdown pass to Arian Smith that really sparked it all. And then that touchdown drive to take the lead was just dimes left and right. He threw a perfect ball up the middle to, I think it might have been to Brock Bowers.
I think it was Bowers, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was Bowers or one of the other tight ends. Right on him, like perfect pass down at like the 15, and then a couple plays later, maybe the next play, I'm not sure how many, he hit A.D. Mitchell in the end zone to take the lead. And then that drive from Ohio State to get all the way down in the field goal range, 54 seconds, and I don't know what they were thinking. They had 2 timeouts after getting into field goal range to try and pick up extra yards, and they had 2 pass plays. They ran 2 pass plays and didn't pick up any yardage to make it easier on the kicker. I don't get that at all. I think it was second down because they ran it to the left hash to get to second down, and then they threw 2 incomplete passes to keep it out as a 50-yard field goal. And obviously he missed, as on some broadcasts, depending on like the latency or stuff with it, missed the field goal as the clock struck midnight to go into the new year.
That was incredible when I saw that split screen. That was nuts to figure that out.
Yeah, wow. There were 3 missed field goals total in that game, which if you think back on that game, you're not going to remember Podlesny's misses. It's obviously going to be Ruggles' misses, which is unfortunate for him because he had a pretty good game other than just that one miss. So that's just unfortunate. That's the life of a kicker. You missed the last one. That's all anyone's ever going to remember.
Kind of the way that I sliced both games when I was watching the highlights. Unfortunately, I missed most of the first one because I was at work. But when I saw both highlights of both games, I have to point out two things. First, I'm going to the Michigan and TCU game. I don't know what Harbaugh was thinking on that first fourth down when he tried the Philly special and he tried to run first because he ran it too wide. He ran it way too wide and he had no chance of that happening there. And then the second point that I want to make to this as well, and you just brought it up about TCU's defense of kind of the way they were able to neutralize that run game a little bit. I remember watching one pundit in particular. I wasn't sure who it was. I don't know if it was CBS or whoever, but they said TCU's defense, they run a 3-3-5 defense, not so much like 4-3 or the 3-4. That's a pretty interesting defense that Sonny Dykes put there at TCU for those guys. And I'll tell you, I mean, some of those guys were flying all over the field on defense. Of course, they had the 2 pick sixes on J.J. McCarthy, obviously, but certainly their defense played up pretty darn well, neutralizing Michigan for most of the game. The game could have easily been a blowout if Max Duggan didn't commit his turnovers for TCU. And then the 2 points of order for Ohio State and Georgia I want to mention is that the one pass that C.J. Stroud threw into the end zone for Marvin Harrison when he got crushed by
I think he was trying to throw that out of the end zone. I think he just didn't put enough on it.
And see, but that's the thing I kind of say about Stroud. He should have easily tried to throw it way away, even out of bounds, because Harrison just got absolutely annihilated by Ringo, and he was out for the rest of the game.
Oh, no, that was it was Bullard that hit him, not Ringo.
That's right. That's right. But just
which is crazy because he's the smallest guy on the defense.
Certainly, it was a jarring hit, and it knocked Harrison out of the game.
Yeah, I think that. So what people are saying is they're mad that it wasn't targeting, but like by the rule, it's not targeting. It's a defenseless receiver, but they can't go and retroactively call that. They didn't call it initially, so they can't call it retroactively. They should have called both flags on that.
I thought that was a pretty clean hit, though. I mean, both of them were going for the ball. And
if you see the slow down version of it, he comes in head up like this way. So it's his ear hole that hit, because there was some helmet-to-helmet contact, because like you can't always avoid that. But he hits him with the shoulder first, and it's his ear hole that hits like the face mask area. And it's not like it snaps and whips his head. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s whole body turned with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
I believe Marvin Harrison Jr. even himself said that he doesn't think it was a dirty hit. I've seen people say that he's came out and said that, and I think he wanted to go back in the game too. But I get the precautions of it just in case.
Protocol and everything. Yeah. And then my last point of order as well, going to the Ohio State and Georgia. I mean, certainly Stetson Bennett, kind of the offense just kind of didn't really seem in sync for that game. But I'll tell you what, I mean, seeing the national championship set up for next week between Georgia and TCU, I'm thinking that's going to be a fun game, no matter what. I mean, if a lot of people are thinking it's probably going to be closer than people think. I think Georgia is currently, I think
it's 13. I think Georgia's 13-point favorites right now.
Touchdown favorites, but we'll certainly see if Max Duggan has a magical ride for TCU or if Georgia reclaims the national championship for the second straight year.
Yeah. What I completely forgot to touch on when I mentioned that first run, I think it was literally the first play of the game for Michigan versus TCU. Donovan Edwards just ran it straight up the middle and got like in the red zone or something. I thought that game was over. Like I was like, there's no way they're going to handle them at all. But they did a really good job the rest of the game. And Michigan's award-winning offensive line did not look good. It was the second year in a row that their offensive line had won the award for the best offensive line in the nation, and then just didn't show up for the playoff game.
Certainly back to the drawing board for both Ryan Day and Harbaugh going into next year in the Big Ten. They certainly will have some teams, though, waiting for them, despite some big changes coming in this offseason. We'll look into the transfer portal in just a few minutes here.
Ohio State's gonna have to have a new quarterback next year.
That's right. Yeah, we'll get into that in just a minute here. But kind of diverting away from the two semifinal games from this weekend, just kind of going into a little bit of a sad note, as everybody here and certainly all across the country just feeling for Damar Hamlin and his family after that horrible incident on Monday Night Football. I didn't see the play happen live, but then everybody was spurring about it on social media and everything, and I was able to kind of catch something on YouTube of the play, and I just certainly just my heart was just broken seeing just when he just kind of just got up. It just kind of seemed like he was okay at first, but then just collapsed on the field, and I was like, wait a sec, like this is pretty darn serious here. And I just kind of wanted to get your reaction, Billy, to what you thought about that incident on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, that was a really scary incident. I didn't see it live either. I think I started tuning in like after I got the notification on my phone, and that's when I turned it on. It was probably 20 minutes after it happened. But like, what took the NFL so long to like officially postpone the game? It took over an hour. He was on the field getting CPR, and for I don't know how long they had the CPR going for, but he was on the field before an ambulance got there for like 30 minutes. And then it left, and it took them another 30-ish minutes after the ambulance left to officially call the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why should that take so long? Like, I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm. I certainly was feeling the same way. I mean, of course, I don't really have the commissioner's ear myself, even though I have a bit of a small connection to Roger Goodell and his family with my cousins that we had over Christmas and New Year's. But seeing the comments by Troy Vincent and seeing also kind of like what happened with the NFL brass, to me, I just think that, it's hard to say, that Goodell doesn't really understand, the brevity of the game and what happened in that particular situation. But everybody was also trying to figure out, if this had ever happened before. And of course, we had incidences in a training camp. People were talking about Corey Streamer with the Vikings, I think in 1999 when he was in training camp and he passed away because of heat stroke. But many people were also going back in 1971 when the Detroit Lions and Chicago Bears were playing a game. I think Dick Butkus hit Detroit Lions wide receiver Chuck Hughes, and Chuck Hughes to this day, unfortunately, he holds the horrible distinction of being the only NFL player to die at an NFL game. I mean, it wasn't official until they got to the hospital afterwards and they pronounced him dead at the hospital. But certainly it was a crushing moment for Butkus and everybody. But the thing I want to counter to what Goodell was doing on Monday Night Football, that was a Sunday game between Detroit and Chicago in 1971, and they played the Monday Night Football game the very next day afterwards. I think the Vikings were playing someone, so I don't understand why Rozelle didn't cancel the Monday Night Football game in 71 after that incident with Hughes, and Goodell was certainly in his situation as well. So you could kind of see the comparison or similarities, but certainly just as you said, it just took way too long for them to finally call it when you could just see the players on both sides. They just didn't even want to play that game, it seemed. Allen, Burrow, and everybody, they were just so emotional, and you're like, I just don't think these guys can play a game right now.
Yeah, and huge props to the broadcast team too that had the huge task of having to somehow broadcast that moment. And I think Ryan Clark in particular did an amazing job because he actually almost died in Denver in a game, and I think it was 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard task for anyone, but especially to try and broadcast that, but especially for him who is like firsthand experience of almost dying playing the sport.
Certainly our thoughts and prayers are certainly with Damar Hamlin and his family. Not much else to report. I've been, trying to watch, seeing if, there's been any updates at all, still in critical condition. But, certainly for the people at UC Medical Center right now, everyone is certainly hoping that Hamlin can pull through and hopefully can at least possibly rejoin his teammates on the sidelines, hopefully in the next week or two, hopefully before the postseason begins. But kind of leaning into our next item of business, kind of still sticking with the NFL right now. Everybody's certainly been, talking about how that game's going to affect the playoff structure, certainly in the AFC here, but we're kind of going into seeing how the rest of those playoff scenarios play out here. We'll probably just quickly switch to the NFC right now. So what is currently at stake? So Philadelphia, of course, will play the New York Giants next Sunday. Giants, of course, clinching with a huge win over the Indianapolis Colts. Unfortunately, with that injury to Nick Foles, I did not like the way that Thibodeau celebrated that celebration after he basically just drilled Foles and then was doing snowflakes. I'm certain Dable and those guys reprimanded him after making kind of a scene there. I didn't really appreciate that.
Even if Foles didn't get injured, that's just excessive. That was like 10 seconds of him laying on the ground doing snow angels.
That was definitely excessive. I didn't like. I did not like.
And to not even look like once or like, and I don't want to blame anybody there, but like, how do you not look at the quarterback to see if he's okay? Like, he's laying next to you. Like, I'm not going to say, like, right. I get that Thibodeau's looking straight up when he's doing it.
Right.
And I maybe wouldn't glance over, but for 10 seconds, that's a bit excessive. I'm not going to say like, don't celebrate, but like 10 full seconds is a lot. And then for not a single other Giants player to come over and be like, hey, he's hurt. You maybe shouldn't be doing this over there. That's not a great look.
The way that I would have almost done it, I always liked it whenever Justin Tuck got a sack for the Giants. All he would do is just like clap his hands together and he would just take a bow. I mean, and then just walk off to the sidelines. But, for Tuck's situation, he would probably just turn around to Foles and say, like, wait a second, I certainly hurt that guy and, he needs help. I mean, that's the way I would have probably played that out.
I don't want to tell anyone to not celebrate because I love celebrations in the game, but like maybe make sure in a sport as violent as the NFL, like football and in the NFL, that make sure that you're not celebrating after injuring somebody.
Exactly. Right.
And like you can sack him, but like maybe before you start doing it, look over at him and make sure he's okay. If he's still on his back laying down, maybe don't do the snow angels.
I know. Yeah, just certainly Brian Dable and Joe Shane will certainly have that to tell him this week. But going back to that pivotal game, though, this upcoming Saturday. So for Philadelphia, a win over the New York Giants will clinch them the number 1 seed in the NFC right now. San Francisco's certainly in the driver's seat right now with Brock Purdy and company right now. He has certainly amazed me over the last few weeks, and they are certainly driving into that number 2 spot right now. Minnesota right now, they are looking like absolute frauds right now with either the wins that they are getting or the losses that they are getting. When I saw that game with them in Green Bay, I could not believe how lopsided that score was. Those two met on Sunday.
Jair Alexander just locked up Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And I think Justin Jefferson needs to be suspended these last 2 games for, I don't care if it was an accident or not. You can't hit a ref with your helmet. Like you can't do that.
No. No. Just Minnesota, certainly as I kind of figured, their issues on defense certainly has been overwhelmed over several games so far this year. And certainly Green Bay did that, but kind of as we were mentioning on Christmas and New Year's Eve, if the Giants play them, if those 3-6 matchups between them and Minnesota go again, I think the Giants could easily get some revenge. I think the Giants played Minnesota in the wild card round back in 1997. I think Minnesota made a late come from behind effort in that one and win by 1 point in 1997. So that'll be an interesting rematch if those two meet as number 3 and number 6. But, as I mentioned, certainly San Francisco's in the driver's seat right now. Dallas could certainly have their shot. But, I just don't think that the Giants, based on what I'm hearing, that, Dable's going to probably just rest his starters and basically, I wouldn't say not give the division or the number one seed to Philadelphia, but probably just resting their starters for whoever they play in the wild card round. So the best I could probably manage it is, Dallas would certainly be the 5 seed. The Giants would be the 6 seed. And then the 3 teams that are basically going at it right now, Seattle, Detroit, and Green Bay, kudos to each one of them.
It's a weird lineup for how that works because right now Seattle is ahead of Green Bay in standings, but if they both win, Green Bay takes the playoff spot over Seattle because of conference record.
Yeah, Green Bay's a win and you're in. But I'll tell you what, if Detroit can handle their business against Green Bay in Lambeau Field, I know it's going to be a tough challenge for Jared Goff and those guys, but I think that's going to be a fun Sunday Night Football matchup next week. I'm looking forward for Jared to kind of rewrite from what Sean McVay probably didn't really see in him when he traded him to Detroit for those picks. I think that's his chance to give McVay, kind of a stand in his face, kind of saying, I'll show you what I was still capable of doing, even though you traded me 2 years ago.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see Detroit in the playoffs.
I would
be
too.
Great. Yeah.
Yep.
But they need Seattle to lose too, right? To get in?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So Seattle needs Seattle needs Detroit to win and for them to win, and then the Lions have to win. So the Lions have to win and Seattle has to lose for the Lions to make it. Seattle has to win and the Lions have to win for Seattle to make it. I think I said that right there. And then if Green Bay wins, they're in.
Yeah, so I think to correct that second point, I think it was
or did I mess it up somewhere in there? I think I said Seattle too many times.
If Seattle wins and I think Green Bay loses, then Seattle takes the spot. I think.
Green Bay is winning in because they'll have the conference record tiebreaker over Seattle if they both have the same record.
Right. Yeah. It's certainly going to be fun to see, how those matchups play out on Sunday. Certainly, I think Seattle can handle their business against the Rams before that Sunday Night Football matchup for next week. And then quickly just going over to the AFC right now, we'll probably just kind of talk about that little conundrum with the Monday Night Football release, seeing how that game plays out. But currently, as people were saying, Kansas City driving force right now at the number 1 seed, and certainly I'm going to bring up the Buffalo and Cincinnati game in a second here. Chargers going strong here at 10-6. Baltimore, of course, right there with them, but I think the Chargers are currently at 5 and Baltimore is at 6. So my math is right here.
I believe that Baltimore. Well, if the game would have played out on Monday night and the Bills would have won, I think Baltimore actually had a chance to win the division next week. But looking as it is now, I doubt they finish that game. They'll probably just call it as a no game happened. Baltimore's pretty much out of it there.
Yeah, but, certainly kind of as I was saying, certainly with Chargers at number 5, Baltimore at number 6, and then, certainly it's just probably a kind of a 3-team race almost at 8-8 right now with New England, Miami, and Pittsburgh. Miami has just died this year. It was so funny when I was watching one of our ones that we did.
I believe they actually just signed, sorry to interrupt. I believe Miami just signed Mike Glennon today.
Oh my God. I still remember when.
So that's the spot that they're in.
But I remember watching one of our previous ones that we did last year, and we talked about how great the Dolphins started at 3-0. When I made the mention that Miami had started 4-0, of course they Tua had that concussion on Thursday night when we were doing that episode. But I remember we were just kind of saying when they started 4-0 in 1995, they finished 9-7 that year in Shula's final year. They started 3-0. There's a chance that they could finish under 500 after starting the season with their first 3 wins of the season. So I'm just not sure.
I think I'm trying to think how that one's a bit more confusing on who gets to go through where. I know the Patriots have the direct path. If they win, they're in, but they're playing the Bills. So that probably won't happen because the Bills are still playing for the number 1 seed.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly going to be challenged nonetheless for New England. Certainly a dysfunctional year for that team, to kind of say the least, for them. But just kind of going back to that game, I know you had just mentioned about with possibly just completely postponing and not continuing that game by any means. One of the interesting things that I did hear from one person in particular, they said because between the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl, usually they grant the 2 weeks off in between. One person, I think, was saying that, if you move the Pro Bowl just a week, if it's just the Pro Bowl and then the Super Bowl is the following week, you could just almost use that extra week and just have Buffalo and Cincinnati resume after week 18. So basically almost just like give the players almost like a second bye week. Because I remember back in 1993, they just kind of tried to experiment with this for a little bit. They gave 2 bye weeks that year in 1993 to NFL teams. It kind of worked, but it was just only the 1 year, and then they just scrapped it. But I just kind of am figuring you could probably use similar logic if you wanted to essentially just give every other team a bye week and essentially kind of do it here with Buffalo and Cincinnati, even though technically they wouldn't have their bye week except if Buffalo gets the number 1 seed. I just think it's it's a real toss and turn the way you slice it for the NFL in terms of decisions. But that was what one sports pundit in particular was throwing out earlier today.
Yeah, I just don't see how you can ask these players to go out there and be like, yeah, you just watched someone almost lose their life playing the game. Now it's 1st and 10 at wherever he made the tackle at. Like, that's just ridiculous to try and ask them to do that.
It's gonna be a really hard call nonetheless. I mean, certainly it's gonna, probably devastate fans, or probably, devastate, certainly for the game in particular. But Roger Goodell and these guys, they have to start taking a more progressive approach to this. I've been, saying this for so many years. I just think if we had commissioners like Adam Silver, almost like in every sports league right now, I just think, we would easily see just so many more progressive things going on here. Because, I think Manfred and, I'm not throwing any shade on Goodell or Manfred or Gary Bettman in the NHL, but, I just think they just kind of seem so stuck in their ways, and they're not able to see the forward process or think like 3 steps ahead, like Adam Silver has kind of done with his decisions, whether it was banning Donald Sterling for life or whether it was the reaction that he had with Robert Sarver earlier as well. I just kind of think that's the game that these other commissioners got to copy from Adam Silver to just kind of get the jump ahead, and just kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I do like that Manfred does make rule changes, though, but like, there's a lot to be desired there. Adam Silver is who you want as your commissioner, ideally, in any sport.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We'll probably even jump a little bit as well, in just a second here. But I think that might go ahead and do it, though, for our discussion here, just kind of updating the playoff picture, and probably just jumping into here really quick in terms of some of the other big news in the college football world as well, kind of some of the other bowl games that we kind of missed as well, just kind of looking through the entire bowl game season in general. I was surprised at the comeback that Tulane had on USC in 5 minutes. Well done, Tulane. And if I remember correctly, I was just looking this up the other day. I think it was like their first major bowl win since like the mid 1930s, if I remember correctly. Let me see. I don't remember.
It probably has been about that long, because I know they left the SEC, like, I don't even know when. It's been a long time.
Yeah, they left the SEC. Yeah, they left the SEC in 1965. I'm reading right now, and that bowl game they won was the Sugar Bowl back in 1934. They finished that year 10-1 under head coach Ted Cox when they won the Sugar Bowl. So it had been, just trying to do the math right here, it had been 88 years in between their last major bowl win. So a major
They
accomplishment.
have only won 7 bowl games
I know.
ever. That is ridiculous. I don't know if that's updated for this year, but I'm seeing their bowl record is 7-8.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, only 7. Yeah, only 7 bowl
This
wins.
was their first conference championship since '98, and their second one since '49.
Wow, just an incredible turnaround from head coach Willie Fritz, really just getting that program there. And as I mentioned, all season, certainly I'm giving a ton of credit for Biff Poggi taking over for UNC Charlotte, but that is going to be a tall task going against Tulane and those guys next year if they're going to retain some of those players that they had from just this past season, and then probably just kind of scouring over some of the other bowl games that we kind of missed. Penn State took care of Utah in the Rose Bowl 35-21. Sean Clifford ending Penn State season pretty strong there. LSU just completely buried Aiden O'Connell and Purdue 63-7. That
I believe wasn't Drew Brees coaching that game?
I think so, right? For
Purdue.
Yeah, not a good way to start.
Yeah, that's
first
not ideal.
Not for your first.
I think he's just the interim coach because who was it? Who did they hire?
I think he was more of an advisor. Let me see.
I think he just came in. I'm trying to remember who they hired.
Crud.
I have to look that up. I'm trying to. Who did it? Who did they get? Man. Oh, I don't. Wait, hold on. No, this was. I saw one that says possible ones, but that's an old one.
I think it's
Ryan Walters.
Yeah. What was he just an assistant they brought up is where I'm trying to figure out.
No, he was the Illinois defensive coordinator. Looks like what I'm looking at here.
I've kind of not really understood that, especially just kind of, knowing, it's kind of the same situation that Marcus Freeman was kind of put in last year when he took over for Brian Kelly. I mean, your first game you're ever coaching is a bowl game with guys, you've never really worked with before. And, you're just kind of, flying by the seat of your pants almost a little bit, just kind of putting your trust in these guys. And, it's not always pretty the first time you're playing with them.
Yeah, it's rough to hire a coach who hasn't been there all year. Or it's different. I'd say it's different for I think most of the time they don't coach in the bowl games, but like last year with Marcus Freeman, his first ever game as a head coach is the bowl game. But it's also different with him because he was already there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they have somewhat familiarity with him. It's kind of weird usually to just have these like one game head coaches. Like last year with Oklahoma, they had Stoops come back and coach the game of the bowl game for them. Yeah,
just trying to win at any cost there. Certainly they got their hands full. That was a hell of a game though between Florida State and Oklahoma though. I caught the highlights of that game. That was a fun game when I saw the highlights of those two. Florida State barely overcoming Oklahoma 35-32. One of my cousins went to the
Oklahoma is kind of disappointing this year.
Yeah, Venables, certainly has his work cut out for him. Kind of seeing some of the other ones. Saw that Washington took down Texas. Michael Penix returning for another year at the University of Washington. Looking forward to seeing
Notre Dame took down South Carolina in a close one, 45-38.
Yes. Nice to see Spencer Rattler, though, finishing out the year pretty strong, but kind of jumping early into that transfer portal news. I think I heard that quarterback Drew Pine for Notre Dame, he's going to Arizona State next year. Is
he? I don't think I saw that.
Yeah, I was just trying to
because I know he had entered the transfer portal because they have they had a handful of guys over there at Notre Dame, but I think he was just sort of got lost in the mix.
Yeah, I was trying to just make sure I confirm it. I think it was.
Yeah, I see is that he's expected to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was reported like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but certainly will be interesting with those moves. We'll talk about some of the bigger ones in just a second here, but just kind of still going through here. East Carolina finishing the year pretty strong, defeated Coastal Carolina 53-29 earlier in the bowl game season this year, and just kind of seeing
with Coastal, Grayson McCall withdrew from the transfer portal. He's going back.
Yeah, that was interesting to see him pull back out. It'll be nice to see him return for his 5th year. Also saw that
Tennessee beat Clemson in the Orange Bowl, very Orange Bowl.
Yeah, well done for Tennessee finishing
that
there.
That was not a good game for Clemson.
No, and certainly big news from there. Another big transfer portal news as well on that DJU. He's going to Oregon State next year.
They needed the quarterback, and I mean they were a pretty solid team, so hopefully he can figure it out there.
I mean, that's going to be an interesting move to the Pac-12, seeing how Oregon State 10-win season.
Cade Klubnik was running for his life against Tennessee. They did not give him – he just had to run the whole time. Yeah. And then on the complete opposite end, Joe Milton looked really good, amazing.
He did. Certainly it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm not sure. I think Hooker did – apply for the 2023 NFL draft. I'm not sure.
He's entering the draft.
Yeah, so
I believe he was out of eligibility anyway because I think he's 24.
Sure, right. And we were just talking about how the age of Stetson Bennett. How old is Stetson Bennett again?
Stetson's 25. 25. Hendon Hooker will also be 25 when the draft comes around.
Wow, that's just wild to just see. Some of these guys that are just older than rookies.
I saw there was legitimate starters, people that have started more than one game this year. Or I don't know how many has Desmond Ridder started several games. If we're including him, there were 11, 2 or 3. We'll include him then. There are 11 NFL quarterbacks who have started more than one game this year that are younger than Stetson Bennett.
It's crazy to just kind of see what's happening here. Someone was just posting right here. Just we're saying about the Gator Bowl. I was just trying to look that one up. Where was that one? Oh, right, when we were talking about Notre Dame and
Notre Dame and South Carolina.
Right. Yeah. Just I was also just kind of looking on here as well. What was the wild one? Oh, right, when Oregon beat North Carolina by 1 point.
With that extra point that banked off the upright to go in.
What a crazy last few weeks for North Carolina. How do you lose 4 straight games the way they've lost? You lose to Georgia Tech, you lose to NC State, you lose to Clemson, and you lose to Oregon in your last 4 games. That is just painful way to go out there for Mac Brown.
And then their basketball team pretty much fell apart in that same span. I think when they lost to NC State in football, they also lost their first basketball game that day, and then lost 3 more in a row after that.
Oh my goodness sakes!
That was a rough time period for Carolina.
I'm certainly as a North Carolina kid myself. I mean, I like the in-state schools obviously, and certainly I'm hoping Mac Brown's going to certainly fix that defense this offseason. But Drake May, I just hope he doesn't ruin his confidence this offseason. I don't think any of those games primarily his fault, but certainly that's a tough pill to swallow as a first-year starter for North Carolina and losing your last 4 games to close out your first year. Hopefully you can right the ship going into next year. And then probably just kind of seeing that though, but certainly just a wild bowl game.
I need to grab something. I just saw that Georgia is currently leading Auburn in basketball, and I need to turn that game on to have it in the background because Auburn is a ranked team, which is crazy. Let me make sure I actually have the TV turned down so you don't hear it.
Even just looking up. Let me just look up really darn quick and just.
I know Missouri has been really good recently in basketball.
It's that SEC has just been tremendous this year. I'm just currently pulling up the standings right now, really quick. Just kind of pulling out some few ones. There's been some major upsets in recent years. And right now, currently, there are no undefeated teams left because Purdue, I think, was the
No, I think
last.
New Mexico State is undefeated. Or is it New Mexico? One of the New Mexico teams, whichever one is good at basketball, is undefeated.
I think they lost though yesterday.
Or did they? Because I saw. They lost yesterday. Okay, I didn't keep track. I'll have to find that.
Yes, they're 14.
Yeah, they did lose by 4. Yeah, that's just New Mexico. Is that New Mexico or New Mexico State? It's just New Mexico, I think.
In the Mountain West. No, actually, no. It's the New Mexico Lobos. Yeah, so it's not New Mexico State.
Yeah, they lost by 4.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the SEC. Just going down here. So here we go. So yeah, Georgia's sitting at 10-3 right now, but that is just stacked right now. Alabama's 12-2, Tennessee's 12-2, Missouri, like you said, they're 12-1. Auburn's 11.
And their one loss is to Kansas, and they blew out Illinois and Kentucky. I think is, I don't know if it was I think blowout maybe extreme, but I think they did. I think that was around the right one. I think they're playing Arkansas today, actually. So there's another interesting game for Missouri.
Just
try to see if that game is in 30 minutes. So
yeah, I just love kind of some teams that are just kind of coming out of nowhere.
I was right with the word blowout. They beat Illinois by 22, and they beat Kentucky by 24.
Wow, and that's going against John Calipari and those guys. Certainly with the expectations that Calipari.
Yeah, they did lose pretty bad to Kansas, though. They lost 95-67 against Kansas.
I was going to say, we didn't really meet or really didn't much talk about that March Madness tournament that happened last year. What an incredible run by St. Peter's last year when I saw them just through that tournament. That was incredible, taking down Kentucky, Purdue, Murray State, and they just kind of lost gas when they played against North Carolina. But just an incredible March Madness this year, and just kind of seeing some of the other schools. I just like it to see when schools just make the runs or just try and get back to their what was the one I was just seeing? I was just scrolling through that Oral Roberts that made that run as a 15 seed. Oral Roberts is leading their conference with a 12-3 record right now in the Summit League. Probably trying to check on UNC Charlotte. UNC Charlotte's done pretty nicely so far this year in Conference USA. I don't think they're in first place. I think Florida Atlantic is on an incredible run right now. Yeah, Florida Atlantic has won 11 straight games. They were 1-1 and they 11 straight games. They are 12-1. Charlotte's
Florida Atlantic is playing 12-2 UAB tonight. Tomorrow night. Not tonight, tomorrow night. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So Charlotte plays FIU tomorrow, and then the two teams that I believe those are the two teams above Charlotte in the conference. Because I don't think I can. I'm looking at just the slate of games being played. But the two teams with more wins than Charlotte in the conference play each other tomorrow night.
Certainly, just as I was just saying, I think Charlotte's just one game behind Florida Atlantic. Charlotte's at 11-3 right now on the season.
Florida Atlantic is 12-1, UAB is 12-2, and then Charlotte and Rice are both 11-3.
Wow, that is just stacking up really nicely right now. Just hoping that Charlotte can kind of keep the home thing going. I was just checking; they're 7-0 at home, so it's nice to kind of see at least a little, nice little turnaround after a bit of a rough year for us football wise. Nice to see that.
Yeah, basketball. I'm have to catch a game. I didn't go to one last year. I'm gonna have to try and go to one this year.
I'd love to catch one myself. I saw.
I think the only time I've been to a Charlotte basketball game is it 2019? Yeah, 2019. It was their exhibition against Georgia, and I only went because of Anthony Edwards. That's the only reason I went. So, and that was you just sort of paid to get in, and me and my friend sat courtside on the baseline there because there were two open seats. So I got to see Anthony Edwards play courtside, which was really cool.
Who was Anthony Edwards was at Georgia then, right?
Yeah, he was the number 1 pick in the draft that next year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. But man, that was, like I said, I mean, I'd love to see Khalifa and those guys kind of going strong there. I'm gonna have to catch a game myself, and probably just going through. I mean, I'm just just kind of updating, if anything. Kind of some stunning ones as well. The Colonial Athletic Association, the CAA, the Charleston Cougars. They're the number 23 ranked team in the country. They are 15-1 right now. Their only loss was against an AP top 25 team. So they're in the driver's seat right now in that conference right now. Kind of seeing some of the other convincing.
Yeah, I'm seeing on Saturday, Charlotte does play Florida Atlantic.
So that'll be a big time game between.
So Florida Atlantic has 2 games against the top of the conference teams there. So they're at the top of the conference, and then they play the 2 of the 3 teams below them in a 3-day span.
And of course, 1 month from now, when it gets really crazy for the conference matchups as well, because come February time, it almost seems every game becomes even more pivotal once you kind of get into the seedings for March Madness. That's going to be incredible going into next month, and then we'll probably reconvene for March Madness about at some point. Houston Cougars still going strong. They're still the number 2 team in the country at 14-1. Just crazy knowing how those guys were knocked out. But just kind
UConn is also 14-1. They're number 4 in the country. And they're playing. They play Providence tonight, who is 12-3.
Men's team trying to replicate what the women's team has done for so many years with Gino Arumia, but certainly number of schools women's wise are starting to get their names as well. South Carolina kind of trying to get their dynasty underneath them, and Notre Dame certainly as well. I was watching kind of just I know it's just not as popularized as much, but it's kind of seen like some of the bigger shots in the NCAA women's tournament. It's just that buzzer beater shot. I think it was Notre Dame against Mississippi State. I think 1 or 2.
That's another. Mississippi State's another team that's getting pretty good in the women's game too.
Her name was so long though. I can't remember what her name was, but that shot, that was like an NBA shot when she hit that buzzer beater right at the very end. I think it was, like I said, I think it was Notre Dame and Mississippi State, but I think Notre Dame was who she was playing for, and just she hit a shot that I think would have made any NBA star go like, "Wow, holy cow!"
Speaking of women's basketball, you mentioned it was like an NBA shot. I'm trying to. When does the WNBA season start up? Because I know theirs is a little odd for when it's like the complete opposite of the NBA. I think they start like in the middle of the playoffs or something like that for the NBA, like their regular season does, or something weird. I'm not exactly sure when it is.
Just kind of almost touching that just briefly as well. Just thankful to hear about with Brittany Griner returning to the U.S.
Yes.
Certainly after spending some time in Russia. I'm so glad that she's finally back home and, hopefully, trying to become a true leader for her team that she plays for, as well as the entire country. I just, I'm not trying to go into politics or anything by saying this, but, something is definitely wrong in Vladimir Putin's mind right now with the way that things have been going down in that country for over the last several months. It's just
okay. I have found it. The WNBA season will start on May 19th, and they have 40 games per team, which is a record high. That's the most any team's played in the season so far. So this is the biggest season yet.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had their draft yet either. I'm struggling to find when that is. They don't really have a very good looking it up doesn't really pop up many results, which you'd think that it would. It's supposed to be sometime in the spring, I think.
Let me see. I'm looking it up right now.
I'm trying to find the.
So it says the lottery selection for it was in November.
Yeah, I saw they did the lottery. I believe Yeah, I believe Indiana has the number 1 pick.
The Indiana Fever, and then so the Indiana
I
Fever.
actually own an Indiana Fever jersey. That's why I know that. I just sort of started
Oh,
vaguely
cool.
following them because I bought a jersey.
That's cool.
I bought a jersey while I was in Indianapolis because it was like their alternate one, and I was like, I love that. I'm getting it. It was the one that was like Stranger Things themed. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, dude, I love that. I have to get that. So I bought that instead of something like Colts while I was in Indianapolis in September.
I remember reading about this the other day. I can't remember. Just kind of drifted to the NBA for a second. I remember, I was like a little kid. I mean, I probably started watching the NBA probably like when I was like less than 5 years old. Back when the Knicks, of course, were the Knicks as they were back then. But I remember the Seattle Supersonics jerseys when they were in Seattle. I thought those jerseys were like probably like one of the coolest I'd ever seen when they were.
We need more jerseys that are like they were back then. We need more jerseys like the Raptors had in like the late 90s and early 2000s.
But just kind of do like what the NFL did in 2009 when they brought back the old AFL jerseys as well. Just kind of have a season in the NBA like that. Just kind of bring back the alternate uniforms, or just kind of bring back the
each team should have like a mandatory like throwback.
Yeah, I agree.
Like an old school Nets jersey, like from like ABA days, would be great.
Yeah.
I know some of them probably aren't like too different. Like the Spurs, it's the same thing. It's just the font's different. It's just if you do that for the Hornets, you're not allowed to do Bobcats. I would be very upset.
Ditch that completely.
Yeah.
Don't bring back those memories.
There's been some atrocious. There's no good uniforms for the Bobcats either. Really, it took them way too long to figure out what their branding for the Bobcats. Like they started to finally get solid branding right before they changed the name. But I remember they did I don't know if you've seen it. Have you ever seen the NASCAR edition that they did for Bobcats jerseys?
I don't think I saw that one.
It was pretty bad. It was like checkered down like the side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have never been a fan of even like some of the crazier ones, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, like with their Bumblebee jerseys and whatever. Yeah. I'm like,
I don't mind them, but like it's like maybe once every 3 years you can pull those out.
Yeah,
or like the Eagles ones that was like, what was it, like yellow and blue or something?
Yeah, that
doesn't.
Yeah,
I remember. I don't like that. I like some of the Eagles throwbacks, but not that.
Kind of drifting like into baseball almost with this one. I remember back like in the mid 1970s. I remember like the Cleveland Indians. They had like this really reddish pink jersey that they used to wear. I think they wore for like one season. I think it was like in 1975 or 1976.
I wish more teams would use throwbacks from like that era. Like I know the Braves have their like 74 throwback, but then they also have what I wish they do, the baby blue jerseys that they wore in like the 80s. They need to bring those back.
Like when they were in Milwaukee too. I mean, the Milwaukee Braves kind of inherited that from them. That's the one.
And then I love how I don't know what day of the week they wear it on, but the Phillies blue jerseys that they wear, the baby blues, I think, or no, it's powder blue, I think is what they call it. I don't know which one it is, but those jerseys are great. They wear them once a week. Each team needs to do something like that.
Totally agreed.
While this can somewhat fit in both. Did you see what the Bruins did the other day when they went to go play their game at Fenway? They all showed up wearing throwback Red Sox uniforms, like carrying bats and gloves. Which and then on the topic of Red Sox, Rafael Devers signed an 11-year, $332 million extension today.
I just saw how the Mets are going to reconstruct that Carlos Correa deal as well after they swiped him from San Francisco.
Is it official that they're like reconstructing that?
I remember.
I know they're working on it.
Yeah, they're going to restructure the deal. I don't know if they're going to give them any more money or maybe just restructure the years on it. And
I think what it would be is they probably just have to rework like the language in the contract to where they could maybe get out of it if something does happen, because it was his ankle that they had a concern with or something like that. So, which I'm just surprised that they didn't Correa and I believe Scott Boras as his agent didn't really give San Francisco an opportunity to do that. It was like they sort of is like, oh, we have concerns about this, and then 12 hours later he's a Met, and then the Mets are like, hey, we have concerns about this, and it's been 2 weeks and they're still trying to figure it out.
Kind of the way that I sliced it almost when he was in San Francisco as well, based on like what I heard. I'm just just kind of even seeing like the San Francisco Giants as well right now. I understand that they're kind of really trying to win, like with so many veterans on that team, but that team just strikes me as just being so old right now. I just think they gotta go.
They're trying. Like, you can't blame them for like not trying. They're trying to get a star player. They are. They've struck out twice now on Aaron Judge and Carlos Correa.
Just in the whole Aaron Judge thing. I mean, finally at least Judge got his contract from there. But I remember someone funny, I don't know who it was, but I think they were saying that when Judge signed his contract, when it was made that he was going to be there, like the Mets immediately stole the headlines with Carlos Correa. And as a Mets fan, the only 2 words I can say right now to Steve Cohen right now is just thank God. This guy finally gets
this like guy finally, injury thing. It's kind of Cohen's fault that you're stuck with the thing of you can't really back out of signing Carlos Correa because Steve Cohen spoke about it publicly. So there's some downsides with him because he's so outwardly speaking.
The one thing I will say is, though, this guy's not willing to throw in the cheap as the Willipons were.
Oh yeah. Oh, I saw something. You'll I don't know if you've seen this. I believe it's in the past 3 off seasons. I saw the list of teams and how much money they've committed to players in free agency. And the Yankees were in second place, having committed over $800 million towards players through free agency. Do you want to guess? I mean, you already know the Mets are in first. Do you want to take a guess as to how much money they committed to free agents over the past 3 years?
The Mets did. The Mets are.
The Mets are in first place, and the Yankees were in second at $800 million. How much do you think the Mets committed?
Over the 3 years span.
Over these past 3 years, what's the number they've committed?
I'll probably say, let me think. I'll probably say, because I know it was like
$800 million is second place.
It was over $800 million this year. I'm gonna say $5 billion.
That's a bit excessive. It's 1.6, so they have doubled the second place team in spending in free agency in the past 3 years.
All I say is just thank God this guy gets it, and the Willipons just go into jail.
And he doesn't care about the luxury tax. They're like, because I believe that they literally created a luxury tax threshold for him.
Right. Yeah.
And it's at any point over that, I think you get taxed at 90% per dollar. And they are like well over that. Like, I think he's paying, like, they're over, I think, $500 million in payroll for next year. And that's including the luxury tax and stuff. That's how much they have committed to it.
If I remember correctly as well, I think they said about the rule for that luxury tax is it's essentially divided among the other 29 teams to kind of like almost give the contracts to like guys that are in AAA and are coming up. If I remember that right.
I'm seeing this. The Mets will pay roughly $111 million in luxury tax alone next year.
Right. Yeah. And that's essentially divided among the other 29 teams then.
Yeah. So, which I think that's just part of, because obviously other teams go through the luxury tax and stuff. Yeah. I think that's just the revenue sharing, is you just divide the luxury tax however much, which I don't necessarily like that teams like the Oakland A's can get away with, hey, we're not going to spend anything, and then they get money because other teams actually want to be competitive.
It wasn't always like that, though. Back when Charlie Finley was their owner back then, he spent all the money he could before he just got ravished and let Raleigh Fingers go and just essentially decimated that team.
In the past, 30 years, the A's haven't actually tried to sign anybody at all.
You gotta just give kudos to them.
Look, you can see some of the stuff the Braves have 2 of their star players now. And
Right.
it's not like they're massive contracts either. Like, it's not like you see the free agent contracts being signed, and then you look at, I think the combined total, which the ridiculous one is Sean Murphy. The Braves have what is going to be a top 5 catcher in baseball for like $12 million a year or something like that, which is crazy. And then I think
Yeah.
Matt Olson's contract is around like 20 million a year, I think, which that's not even the, like, those two are not even combined, not even making what Aaron Judge is making per year, which is crazy to me.
Just kind of just trying to see like some of the other big news like around the Major League Baseball that we probably have missed, but
I'm trying to think if there's anything recent that
yeah, just
I
talk
think
about.
I think before the Devers contract that was just signed today, I think the big one, the most recent big one, unless I'm forgetting something, was Sean Murphy is getting extended by the Braves.
Hmm.
So they had traded him, and I think it was like a week later that he had signed his extension.
It's just reading right here. I think it's probably just not much of a deal, but just kind of seeing sort of how the other teams are kind of plucking guys because the Mets no longer have that Taiwan Walker. Taiwan Walker signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, and then I think Dom Smith, I think a few hours ago, just signed a 1-year deal with the Nationals. So some of the other NL East teams are kind of picking off some of the Mets former players right now, but I like the way
it seems like the Mets are just replacing the players that they're letting walk out. Like they replaced what pitchers did they have walk? So they had DeGrom, Taiwan Walker, and who was the other one that walked?
Oh yeah.
Another like solid one. It's who was it?
Oh crap! Who was that?
Wow,
I think
Bassett walked.
Bassett. That's right. Yeah. Where
So
did
they replaced. I believe he went to Toronto.
really?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, let me double check because Yeah, you're right. Wow,
Yep.
that's
And then they pretty much replaced. So they replaced DeGrom by getting Verlander. They replaced. You could argue. I don't know who you'd say they replaced the other two, but they got Kodai Senga from Japan to come in, and then they made one. What other pitcher did they sign?
I think it's that Quintana.
They signed another.
Was it
Jose? Was it Jose Quintana?
It was. Yeah, I think it was. I was going to say that's a nice
signing.
Yeah.
So you have 3 starters walk, and you just bring in 3 more starters that are like probably put up the same stuff. Like, if not, but like I think you're going to get more out of Verlander than you got out of DeGrom because DeGrom the past 2 years, while he was there, he's amazing, but he's not there.
Yeah, but I was going to say about Toronto's deal with Chris Bassett. That's a pretty sweet deal for Toronto. Toronto's trying to kind of figure out.
They have a really good pitching staff. Like
really
their rotation is going to be really good.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Hopefully they can give Yankees and everybody else kind of run for their money in the AL East.
I think that entire division, except the Red Sox, funny enough, who have an insane payroll, could compete. Like it's crazy because the Orioles have a solid team.
They do.
Like, I like the Orioles team. They could commit to winning right now. If they could commit to winning right now, I think that they could like actually compete. But they're not, it seems like, which is weird.
Just bring back those old rivalries back in the 90s. It was the Orioles and the Yankees. It was Toronto with Joe Carter and those guys before it. Well, no, strike that because I think
I'm seeing what the Orioles have even done because I can't really think of really much of anything they've done, like anyone they acquired. They signed Michael Givens as a free agent. Okay. They traded for James McCann, and they signed Adam Frazier, and that's they signed Kyle Gibson too, and that's pretty much it. Everything else there is that they've done is like signing minor league deals.
Gibson, I think, is probably the best one out of them. I was not a fan of McCann.
I think that's not like a terrible offseason, but like
it is. Yeah,
that's not committing to winning quite yet. Right. Which I wish they'd do. I do like the trading for James McCann because that does allow you to give Adley Rutschman some rest days in there.
That's true. Yeah, give him some protection behind. Right.
And if I've seen it correctly, I believe that the Mets are paying for most of James McCann's contract next year.
I heard about that. Wow.
So that's not bad at all to get James McCann for pretty much next to nothing.
Yeah, I know. Just kind of get him on the cheap, trying to see what's going on here.
Yeah, and then to sign Michael Givens isn't a bad one either. They have an option on that too. So they signed a reliever with I'm not seeing what kind of option that is. I don't know if it's a team or player option or a vesting option or whatever. But so they signed Adam Frazier to play second. They signed a starter and they signed a reliever. Which that's not terrible, but like for those to be your only moves. I mean, I get like you just won, what was it? 80, however many, like it was low 80s, right? Oh,
83 games.
Yeah, 83 and 79. Like that's a good season for a young team. If you were to go out and actually commit to it, I think you could make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Certainly a big difference. I mean, their last winning season was when they went 89 and 73 under Showalter back in 2016. But, I remember when I was talking with you about when, essentially your guy from Atlanta got pushed over for Showalter for the manager of the year. I could not have agreed with you more. I mean, Showalter, I think, is not going to be a long-term solution. I think
the manager of the year shouldn't have been either of them. It should have been Rob Thompson. Rob Thompson by far.
Yeah.
They were dead in the water when they fired Joe Girardi. And Rob Thompson came in and they went to the World Series. How do you not win manager of the year on that? And especially like I could maybe get not winning manager of the year to like Brian Snitker, who rallied his team back to win a division, or Dave Roberts, who put up however many absurd number of wins they had.
Right.
But to the manager who blew a 10.5 game lead in the division and then lost in the wild card round is crazy.
That was wrong when they did that. That should have easily been somebody else when they
and while we're talking about that blowing thing, I know you had blowing the lead there. I know you had mentioned before about like the top sports moments, and I wanted to say on my list I did have the Braves sweeping the Mets at the end of the year to take the division on my list.
Awesome. We're going to get into that in just a sec, but what I wanted to just kind of go back really quick though into on sort of the college football realm. I was just kind of still looking at some of the bigger moves in the transfer portal over the last few weeks. How about this move from just kind of some of the just bigger quarterbacks or just some of the bigger moves? I saw here that Michigan's backup, Cade McNamara, he's going to transfer over to the University of Iowa next year.
And so also with the other quarterbacks moving, I know we were talking about what was it, Drew Pine transferring from Notre Dame. Sam Hartman is going is predicted to go to Notre Dame from Wake Forest.
I like that move a lot for him. I think that's going to give him a nice little area there. To me, I just can't believe how Pine was able to majorly do this year, because Michael Mayer, his tight end, he was probably their best offensive player they had going into the season this year. He was probably the only reliable guy he could essentially use, because they really just kind of brought a bunch of no names to the rest of the receiving core. That was probably the only legitimate receiver he had before. Now he's going to get his start at Arizona State. Now Hartman's coming in.
Yeah, and then with other quarterbacks transferring, I'm just looking at a list of transfers here. So Devin Leary is going from NC State to Kentucky, which I like that, because they are going to need a quarterback with Will Levis leaving, and I think Devin Leary can be really good there. And then Purdue is getting Hudson Card from Texas.
That's going to be kind of interesting, because, I mean, let me just ask you this. Do you believe in Evers? Is Evers going to probably start the season next year for Arch, or do you think Arch is going to be sliding in? I just don't know how they're going to slice that.
I don't know. I would assume you'd start Quinn Ewers because it's like, if all goes well, he will be in the NFL in 2 years. So Arch will only be sitting the 1 year. So I think you sit Arch the 1 year and you tell him, hey, you either, and if looking at if Arch is actually as talented as he's listed on here, and like if he's actually that good, which is a good possibility, I think that you don't have much to sell him on. You'd be like, hey, you sit for 1 year, and it's either you pretty much are, and then it's a quarterback battle, which I think that he's confident in himself enough to have to win that, because it's either he has to beat out some other guy that came in to try and replace Quinn Ewers, or he gets a chance to try and beat out Quinn Ewers, who had like an underwhelming season.
Yeah,
because if Quinn Ewers doesn't go to the NFL after next year, I think it's safe to say that it was probably an underwhelming season.
I agree.
Because of like how much hype and like how good of like the talent that he actually has.
Right.
Because he played pretty good this year.
He did. He did struggle a little bit against Washington in the bowl game, though. He did kind of seem a little frazzled in that game, but hopefully, he could turn it around, once the next season begins. And probably just going back here to the transfer portal as well, just kind of noticed here, Haynes King from Texas A&M. He's transferring to Georgia Tech next year for Texas A&M to lose him.
Yeah. I'm seeing Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech is transferring to Nebraska.
Matt Rule trying to get his start there. How do you feel about Matt Rule going to Nebraska and that project that he's going to?
I think that'll help Nebraska. I think that's a way better hire than what would have been sticking with Scott Frost.
I know.
Because I think he is a program builder. I don't think that Rule was ever built for the NFL. I think he probably should have stayed in college. And I think Nebraska was probably so I wanted, like, this offseason, I thought that was his best fit was Nebraska. What I actually wanted was last offseason, it would have been a stretch for it to ever happen because of how much he would have had to be paid to be hired away from a team that didn't like it. Because without him being fired is what led to him being able to take a coaching job, because that massive contract he got from the Panthers really put a wrench in the plans of any team that would have maybe wanted him at the college ranks, because you'd have to pay out for that. I thought that Virginia Tech should have tried to go after him. I thought that would have been a great fit.
Right.
I would have loved him at Virginia Tech last year, but that was just too much money for them to go out and have to pay for his contract that he was already in there. Because I think there was I think he got paid $45 million by the Panthers getting fired.
That would have been
so Nebraska was the best fit this offseason, but I wanted him at Virginia Tech last offseason, but the money didn't really work out. But I think that's a good hire by them.
I agree.
It may not be a permanent one. Maybe that's a stepping stone, gets you up to a higher level program, and then you can hire elsewhere, get a better coach to actually take you that next step.
Certainly just try and get them back to the glory days. I mean, certainly when Tom
I do think that getting Jeff Sims, though, is a good one, because I think Jeff Sims is talented.
That's a nice pickup for Nebraska, certainly. And
I was looking at the rankings. He was the 9th ranked quarterback in the transfer portal.
It's pretty good. I kind of sticking with that as well. I just saw this. Caden Slovis is transferring from Pittsburgh to BYU. That's going to be
transferring again. He needs to cool it.
I know. And what about JT Daniels? He's on his 4th or 5th.
Yeah, where did he even go? Did he go to Rice, I think?
Rice University.
It's over. It's over for him. I hate to say it. You're not making the NFL at this point.
No, there's no way. If you can't figure out, a team by at least
so the second transfer for him makes sense. Him wanting to go to Georgia made sense there. And then leaving Georgia, that makes sense, because you got injured and you lost your job because of injury. And other teams, that makes sense. It's hey, I want to go somewhere where I'll actually play. And then go to West Virginia. That's a good one to go to. But why are you transferring again?
To a Conference USA school, nonetheless, too.
Yeah.
Just there's nowhere for you to really go but up, certainly. I mean, you're only going to be there for 1 year anyways.
That's just confusing.
That was weird. But probably one of the other promising ones I'll say, though, is Tanner Mordecai from SMU to Wisconsin. Luke Fickell will have a pretty nice.
That's not even the only quarterback that Wisconsin is getting in the transfer portal. They got Nick Evers from Oklahoma.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Who Nick Evers was actually a freshman this year. So they have, I don't know how much he played. I don't know if he played at all. They may have 4 years of eligibility from Nick Evers.
Pretty good. Just seeing how Luke
And
Fickell.
then, speaking of Wisconsin again, Graham Mertz left Wisconsin for Florida.
Yeah. Billy Napier, what do you got now?
Yeah.
What a disaster that was this whole year, especially when I just brought up what happened with Jalen Kitna last year. I was like, what a fool. And your father is a former NFL quarterback. Just,
yeah.
Gosh, how do you ruin your life like that when you're so young and just, wow.
Yeah. And then I think I guess that one was kind of obvious for one of them, but the two major ones, like the higher ones here, Luke Altermeyer is transferring from Ole Miss to Illinois. And then the very obvious one that everyone saw coming, Shedeur Sanders obviously is going to Colorado.
Yeah, just that there's no question about that. But, certainly just, I'm just so looking forward to seeing like some of the bigger name guys as well. I think we left off a few, but certainly none of the bigger names here. I was just seeing this one. I think this quarterback named Emory Jones going from Arizona State to
he's going
Cincinnati.
again.
Yeah,
because he transferred. That was his only year at Arizona State. He was at Florida the year before that, and he was terrible.
Certainly, Cincinnati's trying to figure out themselves. They had that Ben Bryant as their quarterback. He transferred from Eastern Michigan. I think this year he really didn't write home or anything. He certainly wasn't as great as what Desmond Ridder was for them for 4 or 5 years. But just like you said, maybe just getting a little too desperate to try and rewrite your college career, just transferring more than 2 or 3 times.
I'm just trying to see some more like major people here. I see like big Jaheim Bell is going to Florida State from South Carolina. He is insane. He is so good at so many things.
Who is that again? Who was that?
Jaheim Bell. He's a tight end that I believe several times was the primary ball carrier for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just a freak athlete. He can line up anywhere on the field. It's crazy.
There was one thing that I saw here. This tight end named McAllen Castles transferring from UC Davis to Tennessee. So just kind of going from the FCS to the FBS for him. One cool thing, I'll tell you this really quickly as well. When I was writing my draft grade on Dalton Kincaid, knowing how great his tenure was at the University of Utah, he came from an FCS school. The University of San Diego is where he came from before he transferred to Utah. But he put up quite the numbers at USD before going to Utah. So anybody who passes on Michael Mayer, whoever's going to probably land Kincaid in 2023, they're probably going to get a pretty nice gem of whoever drafts him in 2023. That'll be pretty intriguing to see.
Yeah, I'm seeing more. Checking out some more of the. Kent State actually has 2 wide receivers transferring, and they're both ranked in the top 10 of wide receiver transfers. That's a big blow to them.
Mm-hmm.
But Georgia actually got the top 2 ranked transfer receivers in Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas.
Nice.
So I don't think they had any major like wide receiver recruits this year. So that is big for them to get transfers coming in.
Who is behind Bennett now? Who's his replacement? Probably.
So there's 3 guys that are. It's probably going to be Carson Beck, but I would assume there's an open competition between the 3 guys on the roster, which are like the 3 like scholarship guys, I believe there, which is Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, and Gunnar Stockton. Which Vandegrift, I believe, was a redshirt freshman, and Stockton was a true freshman. And then I think Beck is I don't know the technicalities here, if he was like a redshirt sophomore or just a junior. I don't know what he was.
But you think Beck is going to win out, though? You think?
Beck, I would assume so, because he was the backup and was like the only one to get actual playing time this year when Stetson came out. Yeah, so Beck will be a redshirt junior next year.
Okay. All right. certainly have to
So,
try.
and then I believe what the technicalities would be on it. I don't know if I think that Gunnar Stockton will be a redshirt freshman. I don't think he really played at all. I don't know if he took any snaps. If he did, I don't think he threw a pass. And then
Yeah.
Vandegrift will be a redshirt sophomore, which Vandegrift was a 5-star recruit. So
Now it's still kind of just still looking here on the transfer portal as well. I saw one of the bigger ones here, Dorian Singer transferring from the University of Arizona to USC. USC getting another prize prospect for Caleb Williams next year. Seeing.
yeah, A&M lost Denver Harris, who was a 5-star recruit last year. He's going to LSU.
I was just trying to see if I think we probably covered most of the big ones. There was also
most of the big ones. I think we're just getting to the point where she's like, "Oh yeah, here's just some guys."
Yeah.
Obviously, Travis Hunter went to Colorado. I don't think we really need to mention that. If they're a Jackson State player transferring, they most likely went to Colorado.
Yeah, just and I mean I was amazed when Dion when everybody was like kind of showing that presser that he went on YouTube or whatever. It's like almost he said like every player at the University of Colorado saying like, you guys are going to the transfer portal. You guys none of you are probably going to be retained here on our team going in next fall. So he's just basically trying to overhaul the whole program almost. But
hey, they were not a good team, so I don't really blame them.
I know. I'm just trying to really look up. I mean, I know their glory years were back in the 1990s, if I remember right.
I believe they were co-national champions in 1990.
I think you are right.
I think it was them and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, when Bill McCartney was there in 1990.
I believe that was the year with the fifth down.
Yeah,
game.
I think you're right. Yeah, but yeah, just like that tenure under McCartney was incredible, and then ever since, I mean, you've had, just like they said, it's like you haven't had a winning season since 2005. They had a 10-win season in 2016, but that's their only calling card because they only finished 4-2 in the COVID shortened year in 2020. So just not a whole lot home to write about over the last 20 years. And I mean, certainly, I think Dion's capable of doing it, but knowing there's going to be a power shift in that conference in about 2 years with USC and UCLA leaving, it's going to be up to the highest bidder for whoever is going to dominate that conference over the next half of this decade coming up.
Yeah, and early guess you'd say it probably would be Oregon or Utah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Certainly, Wade Bolton Nix is going to possibly be returning next year with him and Penix going at it once again. And, of course, with DJU now at Oregon State, too. And that's going to be fun between those three guys going at it with each other. I think probably just the last quarterback I was going to throw out, just kind of a nice little family thing here. Jake Plummer's son, he's transferring from California to Louisville to join the Louisville Cardinals next year. So, yeah, just one last.
They got Braum is going there, right, as the coach. Yep, because they're playing musical chairs all over the place in the Midwest with coaches. Because Fickle left Cincinnati. So Satterfield went from Louisville to Cincinnati, and then
that was
Braum left Purdue to go to Louisville.
Jeez. Like you said, musical chairs everywhere.
They're all over the place. And Fickle stayed in the Midwest, going to Wisconsin.
Certainly he'll have his task in front of him, but it's kind of really been an all over night here tonight. I think we've covered some of the major.
Yeah, we've been jumping around quick too. After we left the NFL and started once we reached the other bowl games besides the playoff games, I think it just sort of went off the rails and just went wherever we decided to talk about stuff.
But yeah, if you wanted to try and catch up on anything else or anything else you think we missed, I'm just kind of
I can't think of anything that we may have missed now.
I know. Yeah, I'm just trying to think, but I think we've covered just about everything.
Oh yeah, I mentioned earlier, Georgia did beat Auburn in basketball.
Nicely done. Yep. Good job for
So number 22 Auburn loses, which you got to think that they probably not going to be ranked with the next ranking.
Yeah.
And if Georgia wins their next one, they might actually be ranked because I believe they're 11-3 now.
Yeah, I was just trying to go back and hear some of the college basketball. I know I was just kind of covering some of the major leaders, if anything, not calling out anything for anyone. I was just saying about for the division winners. What was the one that I just saw like a minute ago? I think I just missed it. Oh, fiddlesticks. Yes.
Why is ESPN not wanting to show me college basketball? There it is. Okay. Oh, Duke is losing by 26 to NC State right now.
Wow. John Shire and those guys just trying to relive for Coach K right now.
Missouri has a 9-point lead 5 minutes into the game on Arkansas. They're up 14-5.
See if Missouri can keep up their things here. I think this was the note that I was going at. With the conference that St. Peter's is in, I know that Rick Pitino went back to not went there, but I think going with the Iona Gales, they're ahead in their conference 10-4 right now. But one school that was kind of really on a strong note there was Quinnipiac. My parents and we always used to kind of talk about this back like when 1970s when my dad used to be in New York back when it was what was the NBA team they had in Buffalo? Was it the Buffalo Braves? I think it was. I can't remember.
Yes, that was the Clippers now, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, just when they were there back then, he used to kind of go to some of their games when in the local arena, but they kind of battled for a while with some of the other schools in the MAAC. It was different back then. I think it was called the Big Three.
You mentioning Rick Pitino a second ago just reminded me in a different sport, another disgraced former Louisville coach, Bobby Petrino is being hired as the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M.
I don't know what Fisher's thinking there, but man,
which he had taken the job. I forgot where it was at. He had already accepted an offer to be the offensive coordinator somewhere else, and he just ditched them to go to A&M.
Oh boy, trying to
not surprised. It's Bobby Petrino
trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes after that thing you had in Atlanta. I remember Lawyer Malloy, Joey Harrington, and those guys when he left that note for them in the locker room, and he just they scratched out his name and wrote the word coward. There's no better way to certainly say that. And then
you had that whole incident at Arkansas.
Yeah, I remember that. Gosh, that was bizarre. But yeah, I think just probably the last point of order I was just thinking before we probably end this broadcast. You were just kind of bringing up some of the other sports moments from last year. I know you said the Braves were defeating the Mets. What were some of your other favorite moments from last year?
So I was only able to get 6 because it's a lot harder to try and think of just 10. So I put 6 down. So I had Georgia winning their first national championship since 1980. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Messi winning the World Cup. And while sticking with the World Cup, Morocco becoming the first African nation to make the semifinals in the World Cup.
Incredible run for Morocco.
And then I had both home run milestones that were hit with Aaron Judge breaking the American League home run record, and then Albert Pujols hitting both 699 and 700 in the same game.
Mm-hmm. Well done. That was it. That was your 6.
That's all I could get. I was like, what else I need to put on here?
Just kind of looking back on that year for me, certainly it's just a nice step forward for my New York Football Giants, of course, going into next year. Just certainly it's going to be really fun to see how Joe Shane and Brian Dable are going to focus that organization going forward. I was just mentioning about St. Peter's running the March Madness last year, knowing my dad's name was Peter. I remember kind of
speaking of March Madness, the best rivalry in college sports being played in the Final Four was also a top moment of the year.
Yeah, North Carolina and Duke, and I was trying to remember who that semifinal was. Was it Kansas. It wasn't
Because
Arizona.
Kansas won the national championship. I'm trying to remember who Kansas played.
I think it was it Villanova? Yeah. Kansas
It may
versus
it may have been.
I think it was Kansas, Villanova, North Carolina, and Duke. Yeah, I think that was the Final Four matchup there. But that was a fun game between North Carolina and Duke last year in the tournament. Coach K's last year, and certainly Hubert Davis with an incredible run last year. I don't know where the magic has gone this year for him.
Well, they kind of started off slow last year, didn't they?
They kind of did, yeah, but I don't think it was as bad as what they are right now, though.
Yeah. Well, because they were number one at one point this year, and they lost 4 straight.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to think of probably like 2 other moments, but my brain's probably just in a fog.
I'm blanking on thinking of anything else.
I know, just anything in the other major leagues or anything. I don't know, but I think
I guess you could say the Rams winning a Super Bowl in Stafford's first year there.
Yeah, since it's first time for Los Angeles Super Bowl since '83. Yeah, just some of the other ones, but yeah, I'm just kind of drawing a blank.
Oh, that Chiefs-Bills game in the playoffs?
Yeah, epic fourth quarter between those.
Yeah, that what, 13 seconds or something?
Yeah, 45, 40. No, because Kansas City won in overtime with
because it took them, was it 13 seconds it took them to get into field goal range?
Yeah. For Harrison Butker.
And Gabe Davis went off in that game too.
He just disappeared this year. I know we were talking about
Gabe Davis was just so inconsistent this year.
I know. I just, being the fourth round.
He had a game with like 3 catches and almost 200 yards.
I was even saying this the other day. Where in the hell is Khalil Shakir for those guys? That guy.
I don't know, dude. I think the role that he would be used in, they're just using Isaiah McKenzie.
I know. I just loved watching him at Boise State. He just tore it up for the Broncos when he was there for a few years. He was high when I put him on my draft grades for the Bills. I gave him like a B+ or an A- when I was writing his draft grades at Boise State. He just tore it up in the Mountain West when he was there.
I feel like they could use him better.
I know. Me too. Just seeing Dorsey hasn't used him as much. But I think actually that's going to probably go ahead and do it for our first episode here of the All Pro Sports Podcast here. I got a bit of news from my other co-host, Griff Barlow. He and I are actually going to do an episode tomorrow night here for our second episode in year number 2. But certainly we are looking forward to growing this podcast, over this year. And certainly, Billy and I will possibly be, asking around on campus when we return next week. Certainly trying to grow this podcast and see if anybody else wants to join us here for our second year. But this is Alex Christ and Billy McGee signing off here for our first episode of the All Pro Sports Podcast here. And we hope to see you all next time. Have a good night, everybody.